And welcome back to a new episode of the Women's Strength Society show. Today with the topic, why do I look bloated all the time, even though I'm eating clean?
What is clean eating? Is it like you're washing all of your food with Mr. Proper?
You're
A
rubbing
bit
it.
of a soap?
Yeah, that's clean eating. No, joke aside. Clean eating usually refers to eating whole foods, right? So unprocessed whole foods.
Which is generally like a very good idea. Definitely something we want to encourage you to do. And ultimately that's also going to be helpful for your gut microbiome, for your gut health. And that maybe should not lead to so much bloating, but there are roughly 6 reasons why it still might be the case that you are eating clean, like the whole food, unprocessed, you're eating the fibers, you're eating like whole foods, but you're still feeling and looking like you're 6 months pregnant.
That was me a couple of years ago. I remember how I was getting started on my health and fitness journey. And first, I only got into the gym. I started being very consistent with my training. And at some point, I was like, okay, nutrition is a big part of transforming my body. So I should probably change what I'm eating, how I'm eating. And the more and more I got into nutrition and reading about nutrition and calories and macros and whole foods, and like also got into this like clean eating stuff, the more I cut it out like processed stuff, and the more like processed stuff was like bad and not good, and I switched all of the things that I would normally eat to make it more clean, quote unquote clean. I mean, other food is not dirty, so that's why I think sometimes saying clean eating is a little bit not the right word, but let's say whole foods. And I thought I was doing a great job because, I was focusing on whole foods and not eating the chocolate bar and the ice cream and all those things. But I experienced a lot of bloating, a lot of really having like a balloon, which was very hard to understand because I couldn't figure out what type of food it is. And in my head, and I see that with clients too, is that oftentimes we think when it comes to bloating, we just think, oh, I've eaten something that was not good and that I don't tolerate. Like it's often connected just to food intolerances and, hey, maybe I'm not tolerating gluten or histamine or dairy or what it is, but there are so many other things that play into your gut and how it's functioning and what's happening there that are not necessarily just tied to one specific food that is like causing you to feel bloated. So that's why also trying to fight bloating with just eating more and more clean is not always the solution. So you can eat very clean and cut out more and more processed foods and stick to only whole foods, and you can still experience that annoying feeling to be just bloated.
Yeah, and in fact, we are going to see like half of the reasons why it might be happening. They're not related to what you are eating.
So what's the first one?
So the first one, though, is about eating. But the thing is, when you are eating, quote unquote clean, you can still get the wrong amount of fiber. And when I was prepping for the podcast, at first I separated like eating too much or eating too little fiber. But I was like, actually, it's kind of the same problem. Like it's both sides of the same coins, because it's not only about like too much or too little, but it can also be about the type of fiber that you are eating. And so I'm not sure you know that, you who are listening or watching, but there are different type of fibers. And like the two main categories are the soluble and insoluble fiber, which means that some of them are going to, they are kind of dry and need more water. And the other ones, they are not dry, but they already have all the water that they need. Like it's not the best explanation, but basically Yeah, you have fibers that like water and they are going to pull that, and there are fibers that don't really like water or need more and they are not going to pull that inside your gut. And so there are certain foods that have higher amounts of soluble fibers and others that have higher amounts of insoluble fibers.
Do you have just like one example of the one or the other in a
So, for example, oats have a totally different fiber profile than if you're eating
avocado?
avocado. Yeah, different profile. And to be frank, like I don't know exactly the ratio of insoluble to soluble fibers in each of those food. I just know that they are different, and they also feel quite different when you eat them. And so what can happen is that you get too much of one or the other, and this becomes problematic because the different type of fibers that you eat have a different impact on how your gut function, but also on your gut microbiome. And roughly speaking, like the insoluble fibers are going to be fermented, and so they are going to feed the gut bacteria that you have, and the other ones, they are going to make the bolus of the food that you eat just make for food volume in your gut, and they are going to just facilitate motility, meaning that you can poop swiftly when you are swiftly when you are eating. It was not a reference to Taylor Swift, by the way, in case you are wondering. But so this is one thing that can happen when you eat like very clean, is simply like given the exact same amount of fibers that you are eating, the ratio might be a bit too little or a bit too much in one direction or the other for you specifically, because everybody has a different gut environment, has a different gut, like purely the structure of the organ is going to be different. And motility is also influenced by your thyroid profile. And so someone who's a bit hypothyroid or someone who's a bit hyperthyroid, it's going to impact how your body reacts to a different type of fibers. And given the same amount of fiber, if you have a different ratio of soluble to insoluble, then you might react totally differently and it might not be appropriate for you. But even if you eat quote unquote clean, it might also be that you are eating way too little fiber or way too much fiber, because for example, if you only eat clean cucumber, tomatoes, green salads,
lettuce,
lettuce, that kind of things, like they don't have a lot of fibers, and
I always say they don't count.
They don't really
to
count.
my clients. Like when it comes to like, hey, I want you to pay attention to eating fiber-rich veggies. Like this is something I coach a lot. It's like, hey, I see you're eating veggies, but let's try to make it more fiber-rich. So usually we see a lot of like water-based vegetables, which you can absolutely eat. There is nothing wrong with it, right? So we just want to make sure that we also having the veggies coming in that do have some fiber, that actually contain fiber.
Yeah. So you might have like too little fibers because you are eating this, or you might be like an overachiever and you're like, okay, she said eat fiber-rich vegetables, and then on your plate you only have like artichokes and Jerusalem artichoke and I don't know, carrots and avocado. There's another one that's super high in fiber, blackroot. I think it's called salsifis in French.
Okay.
I don't know how it is in English.
I don't know what's in Croatian.
Schwarzwurzeln.
Schwarzwurzel.
In German, so black roots. It's actually white when you peel them, but it's very, very dark. Like the peel is very, very dark, and so this is super high in fiber. And eating a lot of that, you can easily end your day at like over 60 or 70 gram of fiber.
Especially if you're not only eating fiber-rich veggies, but then you have also other foods that contain fiber, like the oats or certain sorts of bread or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Or
or
lentils.
even like nuts.
Nuts,
They're
lentils.
also fairly high in fiber, and
Yeah.
so you end up the day like very, very high, and it might just be a bit too much. Like then there's just too much bug activity in your belly.
I
And
definitely experienced that because I was going a little bit like anti-animal based protein for some time. And so I was covering my protein with a lot of like lentils and black beans and chickpeas and in either in forms of whatever it was, cashew yogurt and lentil pasta and everything just made out of
legumes.
exactly, or nuts. And I was just like over the top when it comes to my fiber intake for me to handle in that scenario, because I think also you can build it a little bit up to like get into the groove and all those things.
But you do want to find the sweet spot for you in terms of like amount of fibers that you are eating. So we do recommend for you to track that for a while to understand like how you respond to different amount of fibers. And this is also something that might change day to day. We are going to talk about why that may be a bit later, but you want to keep an eye on that. And for example, the legumes, they have a lot of soluble fibers, and so they are going to need more water. And this is the second reason why you might still be bloated even though you are eating like clean, is because of poor hydration. And this is something that I never see mentioned, or very rarely on social media, about gut health, is the impact of hydration status. Not only the amount of water that you are drinking, because this is again like going to impact how the fiber behave in your gut, but also the electrolytes that you are drinking and eating, because they are going to impact the gut membrane. And so for your gut to be able to absorb carbohydrate, you have different type of transporter, but the first one is called SGLT1. It's a sodium glucose transporter, hence the name SGLT, and it's number one. So right, and for that, then you need to have enough sodium, for example, coming in. And so if you are I don't know if there's, because I'm talking about myself right now, but if there's like hypertension in your family, and you've heard like, hey, don't eat too much salt because this is not good for hypertension, and then at the same time you hear like, hey, you have to at least drink 5 gallons of water per day. Not 5 gallons, but like an arbitrary amount of water for hydration, and then you do that, then you might create an environment where you don't have enough sodium coming in relative to the amount of water that's coming in, and then it slows down the uptake capability of your gut of the carbohydrates that you have inside you. And then what happens when the carbohydrates stay too long in your gut because they cannot be absorbed, then they are also going to be fermented, and this is also going to be something that leads to some bloating. And sodium is just one of those. Like the gut membrane is also dependent on the sodium potassium pump, so that the glucose can actually go from inside the gut to inside your bloodstream. And if you don't eat enough potassium, for example, then you're not going to be able to do that, and the result is going to be the same. You're not going to be able to absorb the carbohydrate and other nutrient as well, like and transport them from your gut, inside your gut, to your bloodstream, and then this ferments, and then this leads to bloating. So not a scenario we want to have. And then this is especially true if you combine that with reason number 3,
which has nothing to do with your nutrition.
Exactly, is too much high intensity training. And it is related to the one before, because one, high intensity training is going to definitely change the amount of water that you need, but also electrolytes, but
And carbs.
and carbs. Very good point. But also, it's going to have an impact on how your gut function and gastric emptying, meaning like how fast your stomach is going to empty itself and release food inside your gut. And for example, if you do a lot of high intensity training, but at the same time you eat a lot of fibers because you're like, I need to eat clean because fiber is life. Or you've heard like on some big name podcast that women don't get enough fibers, which is generally true. So you're like, okay, I'm going to go
Bump
like
that up.
way overboard with that. And at the same time, you've heard like, hey, women need to do some high intensity interval training to take care of their metabolism and type 2x fibers like power, endurance stuff. And then you end up doing like high intensity interval training, or you just love to do like your Peloton workouts. Then this is like the perfect environment to actually create a shitstorm and a lot of bloating, because it is really going to prevent you from processing the food inside your gut the way it can be processed when you are not doing the high intensity exercise, and when you have a different hydration status, and when you don't have a ton of fibers sitting in your gut.
And I think it's also important to say those are things that build up over time, right? So if you have been doing those type of high intensity workouts, you love them, you're in love with them, you cannot get rid of them, and the other stuff is not like dialed in, it will just create like over time the problems. So it's not that just by doing one high intensity training session, it will immediately create some bloating. We are definitely pro high intensity training for women. We're not saying that it's bad. It's just that if you are going over a very long time by not having those things dialed in, it can create those side effects, right? And then you don't even connect it to like the bloating to your training, because you have done this training like way longer than maybe your bloating symptoms. And so we have one client who is experiencing bloating for, I don't know, forever, probably as long as she can like think of, probably. And she was never connecting that to her training, because it came later. And it was not that like, oh, now I changed my training and I got the bloating, but it can like ramp up over time. It's not that it's happening like immediately. It's not like when you're eating something that is bad in terms of when it's rotten. No, how do you say that?
Rotten?
Rotten?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you immediately feel that it's
like the rotten tomatoes.
Like the rotten tomatoes, exactly. Then you immediately feel like you will run to the toilet and stuff like that. It's not that it will have that like immediate effect.
And it's very interesting that you talk about that, because the high intensity training combined with low carb diet is something that can over time disrupt your gut microbiome and lead to a loss of diversity in your bacteria. So independently of the acute effect that high intensity training can have on your digestive system when you are eating a lot of fibers, or maybe even too little, it goes both ways. But if you just do a lot of high intensity training and you have a low carbohydrate intake, especially relative to that training, because this is also something that's recommended for women. Like, hey, you want to recomp with high protein and then low carb and a mild deficit, and then you do a bunch of like high intensity stuff. You know, the Peloton, the F45, the Orange Theory, and that kind of stuff. CrossFit or sprints, you know, our sprint protocol, I do like 5 times, 15 seconds all out, or 30 seconds. The one that I hear a lot is like 30-second all out and then 90-second rest. and then I do that like 8 times. And it's like, that's a lot with short rest and very like a lot of work at that intensity. Anyway, so this is something that can actually lead to a decrease in diversity of your gut microbiome. And this is definitely something that is very problematic over time, because this is something that's also connected to aging. And there are more and more studies now coming out showing that a bigger gut microbiome diversity is associated with better health outcome in the elderly. So this is not something that you want to take lightly, right? And it's also connected to the next point, because one of the ways that this is going to lead to a poor digestive environment is because high intensity training is a lot of stress. And the fourth reason why you might be doing quote unquote everything right but still experiencing a lot of bloating is when you experience too much stress and or too little sleep. So they both go together, but being stressed out is going to have an impact on how your gut function. The main way it does that is because your nervous system is going to impact your gut, and too much sympathetic activity is going to definitely impact your gut. And you have to know you have a lot of muscles around your gut. In terms of surface and volume, it's almost as much as your quads. And so imagine that you are stressed all day, every day, then your muscles around your gut are going to be tense the whole time. It would be like you are flexing your arm the whole day without ever, it doesn't have to be like max intent, but just like tight enough that you feel it. At some point you're not going to feel it anymore, but it's still going to be tight and working. And if this happens, then you cannot have like a great digestive environment. And this is definitely going to have an impact on how you digest the food that you eat. And it doesn't matter like how clean the food is, whether it's the perfect like ratio of fiber and amount and blah 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 and hydration status, but if you are tense the whole day, it is going to lead to a poor outcome when it comes to digestive system.
And what do you say now to the woman who is like, yeah, but I love my high intensity training to sweat the stress out?
Yeah, you are layering stress on top of stress, and this is very interesting, because what happens physiologically is that you lose the sensitivity to the stress level. You are not noticing that you are stressed out. And then the only way that you are able to
experience that,
to feel that something is happening, to feel excitement again, is by going further into that stress, because you never come back down to your actual baseline where you are properly recovered. And this is something that's quite common. You push, it becomes your normal. You get accustomed to that, which is normal. And then the only way that you can just keep going is by doing more intensity. And very interestingly, when we see that and we say like, hey, you have to dial this back down, and the solution right now is actually to do more like very low intensity training,
where you start to yawn while you're doing your cardio.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, then what we see happening is like, first, it's very boring, and it is because you come from like being tense the whole time, and then suddenly you just kind of scale back down on the intensity, and it feels like nothing's happening. And from your perspective, like from the baseline, then that's actually how it feels, like not much is happening, but this is exactly what we want. And then this is where people start to just like yawn, because suddenly they are actually able to relax and decrease stress, because when you do very low intensity cardio, then you can actually lower your stress level. And and then people are like, oh, my eyes are itchy, and oh,
I just want to sleep.
I just want to sleep. And it's like, yeah, this is very good. This is exactly what we want to have. So
It's so interesting because we immediately, or I see a lot of clients who then think it's not productive, it's not effective, it's, you think you're like training and it should feel a certain way, and then it feels the opposite of how you think a training should feel, and you immediately think it's wrong or it's not, as I said, effective or moving you forward, when in reality you need to just you need to get used to that. I remember when I started integrating more low intensity cardio 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago probably, and for me it was also very boring at the very beginning, but there was a point where I started to enjoy it because I could feel that it's relaxing, that it's like helping with my recovery and that it's really bringing me down. And once I experienced that, then it was easier to say like, oh, I need that, or I actually want that in my routine, because then I can also push higher intensities when I'm having my other training sessions that are like where the purpose is really to push hard.
And I mean, in the moment when you get used to it, it also feels nice to be pretty chilled out, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this was a great session. Like, I'm going home and I'm super chilled, a little bit like tired, but not in a bad way. Not like I need to sleep right now, which I would sometimes feel after a heavy leg day, 100%, or heavy deadlifts or something like that. But just like I'm chill. I'm zen. This
Zen.
is how I feel.
Zen.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have like a great analogy for that, the Netflix analogy of how to view your training and your nutrition to avoid thinking in extreme and just thinking like this is right or this is wrong. But this is going to be the analogy for another episode.
Okay, let's
that
save that for another episode. You need to come back.
That we will record to a future date. But so far, if this was helpful and you want to hear about the Netflix analogy of training that's really going to change how you view, how you do things, then make sure to subscribe and drop a like. Now, moving on to the fifth and I don't know how you say that. Second to last.
Second to
last reason is you can be eating the wrong carbs for your microbiome. So it kind of ties back to the type of fibers that you're eating, but it's not only about the fiber. It's also about the type of microbiome.
Of carbs.
The type of carbs that may or may not agree with your microbiome. So maybe you don't know that, but you inherit your microbiome from your mother, and then along your across your lifespan, then your microbiome is going to shift slightly, for example, because of antibiotics, but also because of the food that you eat and the type of training that you do and the stress that you experience, but also the environment that you're exposed to. And like this is quite a huge problem, but our environment now is highly polluted. We have a lot of quote unquote toxins and pollutants in the atmospheres and our water supplies pretty much all over the world. And this is something that is going to impact your microbiome, and everybody's going to have a different microbiome. And it also means that the bugs that you carry with you that are so important, they are going to react differently to different type of food that you are eating. And two different person on two different places on Earth might react totally differently from the exact same potatoes, for example. And
I mean, not even different places on the planet. It's like you and me, we are definitely reacting differently to different kind of carbs.
100%.
Like I'm the bread monster. Like I can eat and tolerate a lot of flour-based carb sources.
And I can eat like a lot of potatoes and quite a lot of lentils.
Yeah.
But this is also funny because not all lentils are the same. So beluga, like the black ones, they agree with me. The green ones, not
Not
so
so
much.
much. Yeah.
And so, and those are both like very healthy, very quote unquote cleaned food.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that I can eat much more of those black lentils without having any kind of problem with my digestion. And other type of beans or lentils, it's not going to be the same. And likewise, as you said, like I know that there's only a certain amount of flour-based product that I can eat, but then if I go over that threshold, then it's definitely going to negatively impact my digestion.
And that's something that I didn't realize at the beginning of my journey. I was searching for, that diet, that one diet that will help me, the right one, which was always kind of pre-created from different people and places, right? So you have the Atkins diet and the keto, the carnivore, and the paleo, and whatever it is.
Whole 30, blood type
A
diet.
blood type diet. Oh, my blood type diet.
Hence why you should not eat like animal protein.
Exactly. That's why I was going vegan for
but
a couple of
me too,
weeks.
actually. Me too.
Yeah. So I was always trying to search for a solution out there, right? And searching for the perfect diet, which is the right one to transform my body and regain my period. And in the end, it's like your diet is so unique to you because you are unique. Like just talking now about the microbiome, but also the environment you live in, and the stress that you're experiencing, and your sleep, and all those things play a role into what you can tolerate and how much you can tolerate of certain things. So I think nutrition should become more of, or I would wish for women that it's a little bit less an area of so much like frustration and confusion, and becomes more an area of curiosity and experiment. And really, instead of searching for the one solution and the one answer, which is you should do X, Y, and Z, it's like, even us as coaches, when someone comes to us, it's still a process of figuring stuff out to really nailing that sweet spot for the individual. And so I want to encourage you to have an open mind when it comes to nutrition, and see it more as like experiment. When things are not working, if you're experiencing bloating, yes, it can be like super annoying, but there are also many, many things you can tap into and learn about that can help you figure out like, hey, maybe it's like, just from the reasons we are naming here, like go step by step through those and try to see if there is some truth for you there.
Mic drop. That would be actually the perfect ending. I'm like,
Sorry.
push, mic drop. Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
Drop it like it's hot. But we have another reason.
Yeah,
The
we
last
have
one.
the last point. We already very briefly touched on that, but a suboptimal microbiome can be the reason why you are eating perfectly right, but you are still experiencing like quite a lot of bloating. And this is something that might happen because no food is perfect, but also there are some certain things that can help you improve your microbiome that is not related to food. Like we already said, the training can have an impact there. And for example, doing some low intensity cardio is also something that's going to support microbiome diversity. So again, nowadays there's a lot of advice against cardio for women because cardio made us all skinny, but now we want to get strong, so lift weight. You. Sorry, I'm making fun of the women who have that kind of language and narrative, which is something that I think is so like.
It's just like going in the opposite direction of another extreme, right? So if you're just lifting weights, there's definitely something missing.
And cardio is truly like one of the best thing that you can do to improve your health on so many levels. And I feel like saying women should avoid doing this because this is what made them skinny is just so
It's wrong.
It's
It's
wrong
not that the
and
cardio.
it's stupid. It's
Yeah.
like you forgot to switch your brain on when you said that. Rant over. Sorry about that. The point was you can have a suboptimal microbiome, and what might be helpful for you to improve that is actually supplements. And this is something that is going to help, for example, detox. This is also another word that's pretty funny that's been bastardized, but you have like your own detoxification system, but you can support that with like specific supplements. And one of those is modified citrus pectin. Pectazole is the brand. That's the best one you can get. And this is definitely something that is going to help, for example, excrete heavy metals without biting to other minerals. So it's not going to deplete you from the good stuff. It's really just going to help you carry out the bad stuff that you don't want to have. And this is something that might absolutely be needed for you to improve and change your microbiome, because if you have a lot of it doesn't even have to be a lot, but if you have a fair amount of heavy metal sitting inside your gut, which is absolutely possible nowadays thanks to all the pollution that we are exposed to, then this is what's going to help remove that. And those heavy metals, they are definitely going to favor the the bad bugs to grow inside your gut. I don't really like to say like good and bad bugs, but you get the idea. So that's one thing. Then the other thing that might be helpful is specific enzymes, because those digestive enzymes are going to help basically quote unquote digest the crust of the pathogens and fungi and bad bacteria that tend to overgrow and create the bloating. And so this is something that you are not going to get from your diet. So you might be eating the perfect diet, you might be doing the perfect training, you might have the sleep routine down, but you might still need to have specific help from specific supplements, and to help protect that. Spore probiotic can be also super helpful, because they are going to help the good bugs to stay in your gut, and then they are going to keep the bad bugs in check so that they don't overgrow. So those would be the few things that you can also experiment with that are going to help, besides everything that we touched on already.
So we're definitely not the coaches who will just give you a list of supplements, a ton of supplements, just for you to have a list of supplements, which we oftentimes see, right? So there are coaches just like pushing a supplement stack on you. Probably they're earning some commission with that. But it's so important to also take an individual approach when it comes to your supplements. Of course, there is stuff which is probably beneficial for a lot of women. But again, if you have bloating, a gut issue, it's definitely worth to take the time to try things out individually for you. We had a lot of clients, one-on-one clients, where we would then start on a protocol, go through different phases, and then also see how it's changing. Like, is it improving? Is it not improving? What helped? What didn't? So again, it's a little bit of an experiment, and just because you are working with the coach doesn't mean like we have the silver bullet, the one thing, but we are definitely the ones who are going to go above and beyond to figure out what you need, and put everything into place so that we can test those things in the right order, right? Because if you're also just starting today to experiment with all the things we talked about today, and you're doing everything at once, you're changing everything that you're doing, and maybe it's going better, which is great. Keep going. But maybe it's also not going to be better. You don't know what worked and what didn't. So it's also important to have a little bit of a phasic approach when it comes to trying those things out, and not just,
Try everything at once